Welcome to Revelation of Light Part 7. Mingle to Mangle. Last time we spoke about this spiritual Roman kingdom, a kingdom that uses spiritual words and spiritual knowledge. A kingdom that was symbolized as a strange little horn that arose out of the fourth beast in the book of Daniel, chapter 7. We learned that that fourth beast signified the kingdom of Rome. Well, this little horn that would come to prominence in the time of the 10 horns, signifying the divided Western Roman Empire. This little spiritual Roman kingdom, a unique kind of kingdom, we learned was none other than the papal Roman kingdom. We learn that from 400 to 600, the emperors in the West, or in the Western Roman Empire, increasingly relied on bishops, Roman Catholic bishops, to assist in secular matters. The fallen population and the penetration of German peoples into the interior of the Roman Empire helped create a need for new leaders, and it was the Christian bishop who increasingly filled this role. By 600, the effective legislation and leadership of Western Europe was provided by the Christian clergy, particularly the bishops, meeting in local councils. And so it was the Germanic barbarian tribes that divided up the Western Roman Empire. This was the beginning of modern Europe, symbolized by the 10 horns that arose out of the fourth Roman beast of Daniel chapter 7, and then among them arose this little horn, and 3 horns were removed out of its way, and that little horn had eyes and a mouth and spoke pompous words. We learned about Vatican City, but before Vatican City there were the papal states. Pepin III had as much to gain by an alliance with the popes as they had to gain from his protection against the Lombards. And so here we see this mingling of this papal Roman kingdom with the civil powers. Pope Stephen, from 752 to 757, won from Pepin an agreement to protect the papacy in the possession of the Byzantine territories in central Italy. And indeed, he made it clear that by anointing the new Frankish king, he had constituted him and his successors as the guardians of the rights of the Apostle Peter. And so here we see that mingling. Accordingly, Pepin in 754 or 755, brought his army to Italy and compelled Aistulf, king of the Lombards, to return his conquest to the Pope. Thus began the history of the states of the Church, that temporal sovereignty of the papacy, which was to last until 1870. And then to be renewed, if on a much smaller scale, by the creation of the state of Vatican City. This donation of Pepin in 756 provided the basis for the papal claim to temporal power. And so the papacy would have spiritual and temporal power. I told you it is a unique kingdom, as was symbolized in Daniel 7 as that little horn, different from the others, with eyes and a mouth. Now, the French Revolution and the rise of Napoleon was the death blow for the papal temporal power until 1929. The continuation of the papal states was in question from 1798, with the imprisonment of Pope Pius VI until 1870, when they finally came to an end. It was the end of the Papal States. 1870. But 1929 was the beginning of the healing process for the papacy. You see, to use the language and imagery from the book of Revelation chapter 13, the death blow to the papacy, the mortal wound, was received in 1798, but then the mortal wound would be healed, and that healing process would begin in 1929. And so, 1797, Napoleon's conquest of Milan and his seizure of several papal territories was confirmed by a treaty that established the Cisalpine Republic. In 1798, the French seized the rest of the papal territories and proclaimed the Roman Republic. The refusal of Pius VI to recognize the new state led to his arrest and imprisonment. And so he was arrested. This was the death blow, 1798. The armies of Napoleon, led by General Berthier, took the Pope prisoner. Pope Pius VI died in exile in France in 1799. The Papal States were restored in June of 1800, and Pope Pius VII returned, but France again invaded in 1808, and this time the remainder of the states of the church were annexed to France, forming the department of Tiber and Trasimene. With the fall of the Napoleonic system in 1814, the Papal States were restored. In 1860, with much of the region already in rebellion against papal rule, Sardinia conquered the eastern two-thirds of the Papal States and cemented its hold on the south. On September 10th, Italy declared war on the Papal States, and the Italian army, commanded by General Raffaele Cadorna, crossed the papal frontier on September 11th and advanced slowly toward Rome, hoping that a peaceful entry could be negotiated. The Italian army reached the Aurelian Walls on September 19th and placed Rome under a state of siege. Although the Pope's tiny army wasn't capable of defending the city, Pope Pius IX ordered it to put up at least a token resistance to emphasize that Italy was acquiring Rome by force and not consent. The city was captured on September 20th, 1870. And so that was the end of the temporal dominion of the Pope, the loss and end of the Papal States. But again, the healing of the deadly wound, again to use the language of Revelation 13, began to happen in 1929. Well, the book of Daniel 2 and verse 43, we looked at this in the past. It tells us, as you saw iron mixed with clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. And so the papal kingdom would mingle with the civil authorities, and sometimes there were power struggles, and things didn't always work out favorably to the papal power. As we discussed, that deadly wound of 1798. However, that mingling continues and will continue until Jesus comes again. As we can see, the imagery of the book of Daniel, chapter 2, the feet of iron mixed with clay in the statue-like image in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar corresponds to the period of the 10 horns of Daniel chapter 7, among whom 3 were removed to make way for this strange little horn, the papal Roman power. And so the period of the 10 toes corresponds to the period of the 10 horns. It is our time. We are in the time of iron mixed with clay, and this Roman papal iron goes right to the very end. We are in the toes of time. The Roman papal kingdom has been working as a unifying agency since the beginning of modern Europe. It is that Roman iron in the feet of the statue image of Daniel chapter 2. It has been mingling with secular powers and intertwining itself in the politics of the world for the sake of establishing its universal dominion and uniting the world under its spiritual monopoly. But still, the world remains divided in many ways. Yes, we are in divided times up to the end. Well, we have an example of that mingling when we look at the Jesuits. The Jesuits are a monastic order of the Roman Catholic Church, founded in 1536 in Paris by Ignatius of Loyola. Their special obedience to the Pope naturally caused the Jesuits to fight the greatest danger to the Roman Catholic Church. What is that greatest danger? Protestantism. Through this fight, the Jesuits developed political talents. See the mingling going on? Political talents, which soon made the members of the order the most versatile representatives of the Catholic Church in worldly affairs, mingling in the worldly affairs, associated with all layers of society, from the humble to the powerful, mingling with all layers of society, we can say. The Jesuits combined great intellectual versatility and a shrewd political apprehension with a deep religious mysticism, which was especially connected with the adoration of the Blessed Virgin. They often played, directly or indirectly, a vital role in the political and economic conquest of the countries in which they served. In the U.S., they possess a large number of educational institutions, institutions of great influence. Where are these institutions? The most noteworthy being in New York City. Well, that's a place of great influence. Washington and Georgetown, D.C., Baltimore, Buffalo, New York, St. Louis, Missouri, New Orleans, Louisiana, Denver, Colorado, Cincinnati and Cleveland, Ohio, Omaha, Nebraska, and San Francisco, California. Well, getting a little bit closer to home in terms of time, so to speak, let's look at this article briefly. October 14th, 2021, from the Washington Post. The article is entitled, Biden to Meet with Pope Francis to Discuss Coronavirus, Climate Change, and Caring for Poor. Well, these are universal issues, global issues. Who better to have on your side than a leader with global, worldwide influence, the Pope? And in this case, we're talking about Pope Francis, the first Jesuit Pope. You know, Biden has made very clear that he's a devout Catholic himself. And he said that one of the things he really loved about Pope Francis is that Pope Francis is the embodiment of Catholic social doctrine that was so influential on Biden. Well, there we see that mingling in our time. Biden and Francis will discuss, according to the article, working together on efforts grounded in respect for fundamental human dignity, including ending the COVID-19 pandemic, tackling the climate crisis, and caring for the poor, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said in a statement. And so we see that mingling. That mingling is going on and will continue to go on until Jesus comes again. Well, stay tuned for Revelation of Light Part 8, A Picture is Worth 1,000 Words.